Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So in this video I'd like to go over pretty much the best companions for CC, crowd control, where you want to go and stun or daze or immobilize those enemies as quickly as possible while in combat so that they don't deal a whole bunch of damage to you. And these companions are best equipped or best summoned with like a tank or a healer. As a DPS, you kind of ideally want a companion that's going to do a lot of damage in those area environments where you would use an Xuna, where she can use her bloodbath and jump between multiple targets, or a Regis who could do a ton of damage to grouped up enemies. First things first, I'd like to give a special thank you to all of my channel members for helping me keep my channel going. So first we're going to jump to my companions tab here. We have a bunch of them put as favorites, and these are the top 5 which I found to be the best. And I made sure all of them have an area of effect stun capability. Single target stuns are just going to be useless when you're looking for good crowd control. Many of single target fights, that single target enemy will just be immune to those stuns, and thus they're absolutely useless. So first on the list here we have, in alphabetical order, the Crystal Golem. So we'll summon him, and when we go and jump next to a dummy and we attack it, enter combat, you can see he does this large area and he slams his fist down and stuns the enemy. Now this stun duration is a total of about 3 seconds. This will vary depending on your control bonus here. This will increase the potency of your control powers, but then it will also be decreased depending on the enemy's control resistance. So that's this Crystal Golem. Now he does have the benefit of having a 15-second cooldown in between, which will equate to about 12 seconds of time before he does his next stun after the other one's expired. Now usually he will, when we resummon him and enter the fight, he will do this power pretty much immediately, and he takes a bit of time to charge up, so that's 2 seconds. And sometimes he doesn't do that immediately and he'll just start punching some dude, and then he'll take about 6 seconds before he actually does this here. Now we're going to move on to the next guy, and we have our Grazilax. He's kind of a heroic type NPC character, much like Xuna, and we go and enter combat and he does this stun. And it does it in a cone. So you're going to have to get him lined up in a position where you would have enemies like so, and then he could stun multiple of them. Now it is a bit tricky because this cone is very narrow, but if you can manage to get multiple targets, he will stun them for a total of 3 seconds each. You can see he stunned both of them. The cone is really narrow that it didn't even hit this guy. He'll stun for 3 seconds, and then he'll do this again after a cooldown of 10 seconds. So that will equate to 7 seconds between those stun times. So after he's finished stunning this guy, it'll be 7 seconds before he'll stun him again. And he'll generally do this as soon as he enters the fight. He'll do it immediately. So with the charge up time, that's about 2 seconds after entering combat, as long as he can lock onto a target and doesn't have to run after them. So next up we have Grung. And he again has the ability to do a cone effect. And that stun ability won't stun as long. It's about 2.5 seconds. And he does have the longest cooldown as 18 seconds. And that will equate then to 15.5 seconds between those stuns. Now he will generally do it immediately after you enter combat, as long as you have him resummoned. And he'll do that stun, and it lasts that 2.5 seconds. So that's about 3 seconds after he enters combat, because his charge up time seems to be pretty lengthy. There we go, he uses it, and sometimes he's a bit silly and uses it on nothing. Anyway, then we move to the intellect devourer, which many would say is like the best. He has the ability to hold targets, which in actual fact is also a stun. And you can do it for 2 seconds, it says here, and then when we go and look at his actual mind flay, he'll be able to double that duration. So technically 4 seconds, but it's actually more than that. It's actually 5 seconds. Now again, he will normally do it as soon as he enters a fight, and his area is massive. He stunned all 3 of them there. If we get him to, let's say, attack this guy from here, I believe he just wants to attack that guy. You can see he's stunned both of those guys, and that stun duration is 5 seconds. The cone is much wider, about 120 degrees, so he'll have no problem hitting many of the guys within an AoE fight, and the cone goes out about 60 feet. Now his stun duration is 5 seconds, but with a cooldown of 12 seconds, which will equate to then a 7-second duration before he stuns the enemies again, which is pretty nice. And his charge up time is not that bad, so as soon as you enter combat, it's about 2 seconds before he gets those enemies stunned, as you can see. So then we have the Iron Golem, and this guy right here will have the ability much like the Crystal Golem, but he won't show the red area on the ground, so you won't be frightening your allies. And he has this, again, Fist Pound, same area, and he'll stun those enemies around him. And it's 3-second stun duration. You can see he does this stun very frequently. His cooldown is 7 seconds, so that reduces to a 4-second timer between stunning his enemies, and that's great. The drawback is he does have some knockback on that ability, and we'll go jump over to some enemies and we'll actually show you that on the Crystal Golem and also the Iron Golem. These guys will probably die too quick, so we'll jump to some enemies just down here. Here we go. So we attack these guys. Here's our Iron Golem. As long as he isn't getting controlled by, let's say, enemies, you can see there, that's his knockback. It's only like a few feet, so it's nothing too major that's going to really screw up like your allies in dealing damage. So it's nothing I would worry about, but his stun is going to be really handy, let's say in the Vault of Stars, to like interrupt those enemies from, let's say, rushing one of your allies. So he's definitely one of the major ones I would take, along with the Intellect Devourer. The Intellect Devourer is especially good when you have those enemies spread out, because he can hit, like, doesn't matter how far away they are, like up to 60 feet. He stands back there at range and he just stunned all those guys. You can see they're doing like nothing there, just zzz. Now unfortunately the other 3 companions, well, we at least go to Grung and Grazilax. Both of their cones are just way too narrow. Grazilax does have the drawback of his cone only being able to reach about 30 feet, and the Grung has that up to about 40 feet. All of these are kind of estimates. You can see he did manage to stun those guys back there, and he'll probably stun 2 of these guys here now. No, only just 1, but that killed him, so he's dead anyway. The one thing you might want to consider is you might just be better off taking a companion which can deal lots of damage, and a dead enemy isn't going to deal any damage. The thing is though, as a tank or a healer, you generally don't have Indomitable Runestones in your companion gear. This is my DPS build on my tank, so I do, and you don't generally have Warlord Inspirations. And if you don't have those, you're going to miss out on a lot of companion damage. So if you're not running with these buffs to your companion damage, then you're definitely better off using one of these stun, these CC companions, rather than just pure damage. Especially when you're running hard content, where those enemies have a lot of hit points. Xuna is great for DPS in those situations, since she'll jump between targets, get those hits off really quick. So let's say an enemy's just spawned, they'll probably just hit Xuna first because she'll have the highest aggro them because she actually hit them first. So that's those 5 companions, and I can give a more detailed description of them up here now. You can see on screen, and you can see we have the Crystal Golem with a stun duration of 3 seconds, Grazilax also 3 seconds, Grung only 2.5 seconds, the Intellect Devourer 5 seconds, the Iron Golem of 3 seconds. But then you want to look at their cooldowns or their non-stun time. So the non-stun time is the time which their targets won't be stunned for. And with the Iron Golem, that's 4 seconds, so that's really awesome. Intellect Devourer, it's 7 seconds. In my opinion, Intellect Devourer is going to be a lot better when you have lots of enemies spread out. So like in Vault of Stars, and most of the time in like the maze or in the beginning areas. And then you also have your Grung and your Grazilax. They're okay, but they're just not great with their such narrow cones. And then you have the Crystal Golem which again is not so great with its non-stun time being at 12 seconds, the cooldown of 15. So that's my top 5 companions. There are of course other companions out there which can knock back, which can stun, but many of the other ones are like single target, or they just take so long. They have like a 25-second duration before they would stun their enemies, and then only for like 2 seconds. So it wasn't worth it sticking them here and wasting your time with those. So these are my top 5 recommendations of which companions to get. And of course the intellect devourer and the iron golem being those top choices right there. So hopefully this is at least somewhat helpful to you guys. If it was, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing. I will see you guys around. Bye for now.